Thank you, guys. On a Monday, good morning. Are we back at war? President Obama saying the U.S. will increase its offensive to destroy ISIS. This is new reports claim the military campaign against the terrorists could last at least 3 years, which would outlast the Obama presidency now in the second term. Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a decent weekend. New week here. I'm Bill Hemmer, and how you doing?
Good to see you, Bill. Good morning, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. So the Commander-in-Chief is going to make his case to the American people on this. He'll lay out the plan Wednesday during an announcement. But first, he will meet with the folks on Capitol Hill and talk to them about his plan. That's going to happen tomorrow. Peter Ducey's live in Washington. He brings us all the details on this. So what do we know so far about what the president has in mind here, Peter?
Martha, the president's plan is already unfolding because senior administration officials tell the New York Times the first phase uses airstrikes in Iraq to protect Americans and minorities while preventing ISIS from gaining too much ground there. The second phase, which can start after Iraq forms their new government, would be training the Iraqi military and any Kurdish or Sunni fighters who can help. Then after that, the third phase, go into Syria and take out ISIS targets there. But President Obama wants the American people to know this is not the start of a long ground war.
This is not going to be an announcement about U.S. ground troops. This is not the equivalent of the Iraq War. What this is similar to the kinds of counterterrorism campaigns that we've been engaging in consistently over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
The military action in Syria could last 3 years, which means strikes there could continue as the 45th president is sworn in, Martha.
Very interesting in terms of this plan. So what about Congress? What are they asking the president to do about ISIS?
Martha, there's a great appetite among congressional Democrats and Republicans to start striking inside Syria quickly. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein says she's glad the president is going on offense, but she wants strikes in Syria, and so does Republican Senator Marco Rubio.
If you're serious about defeating ISIL, you have to go after where they're headquartered. And what's important to understand about their presence in Syria is that they are generating revenue in Syria with former Assad refineries that they now control and they're generating revenue from. But all of their supplies, their command and control structure is being operated from there.
Nothing in the president's speech Wednesday should be a surprise to lawmakers because President Obama is expected to lay it all out for congressional leaders at the White House tomorrow. Martha?
Busy week. Peter, thank you.
So then, are we going back to war in Iraq yet again? Byron, you're chief political correspondent, Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor. Byron, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
You can make an argument we're already at war, but you have a commander-in-chief who will not call it that, will he?
Well, this is a president who is personally and politically constrained from calling this a war in Iraq. Remember, this is the man who ran for president and won on a promise to end the war in Iraq, and once he was in the White House, he did it. So I don't think there's any way in the world, even though we are going to be bombing in Iraq, even though we're going to be training troops and gathering intelligence and planning military assaults in Iraq, I don't think there's any way in the world the president will say the United States is returning, is again going to war in Iraq.
Yeah, Martha just mentioned this with Peter. What's important about the address this week?
The important thing is that the president, this is the first time he has felt the need to explain his actions in this war to the American people. Remember George W.
Felt the need is the phrase there you used.
Felt the need. And it's because of the escalation in U.S. military action. There's no doubt that the United States is going to become much more involved in an air war over Iraq and possibly even in Syria. And this is something that a president needs to explain to the American people. It's something George Bush did a whole bunch in the run-up to the war in Iraq. Again, an image that President Obama does not want to replicate.
Yeah, there has been success in Iraq, 145 airstrikes already. In the view of critics, is that sufficient or is that not enough?
No, in the view of critics, it's really a bunch of pinpricks. You have to remember that a lot of these strikes have been to protect American facilities, which is certainly something that has to be done in Iraq, but it's not moving toward degrading and destroying ISIS capabilities. And there are a number of critics who say the United States should be bombing more aggressively right now, and they can do that even before President Obama develops an overarching strategy, they can begin to destroy ISIS assets before they have the bigger picture plan.
Now, take us down the road in that bigger picture. On Friday, when the president was leaving Wales, he pretty much laid out his three-prong approach. It was current airstrikes, it's about the election, then it's taken to the fight of ISIS and ultimately destroying them. And, based on what we understand, he will draw that out a lot more on Wednesday afternoon from Washington. That being said, Iraq is one deal. But even if you take the terrorists and chase them across the border into Syria, ultimately, will the United States carry out airstrikes inside Syria? Is that where we are headed?
Well, it seems to be, because there are a number of critics, even on both sides of the political aisle, who are saying, yes, there's a lot of work to do against ISIS in Iraq, but the bigger picture, you cannot destroy ISIS. And the president is drawing up a plan to destroy ISIS. You can't do that without attacking their strongholds in Syria. But that's something I think the president feels he doesn't have to, that's a line he doesn't have to cross right now. First of all, he wants to get a plan together, explain it to the American people, and begin making attacks in Iraq, and then figure out what to do in Syria later.
Byron, thank you. Byron York from Washington,
you,
D.C. Good to have you on. Martha.
Well, meanwhile, the first phase of this operation has already begun. New U.S. airstrikes in Iraq are taking out ISIS targets near the strategically vital Haditha Dam. Fighter jets and bombers carried out attacks. You can see some of the video from those attacks here. They are trying to prevent these terrorists from getting control of the water and electricity systems in that area. John Huddy's live in our Mideast Bureau. So, John, this really marks a new area of operations for the United States, doesn't it?
Well, it really does, Martha, and you have to look at the geography, so let's start with that. The Haditha Dam is in western Iraq. Take a look. It's part of what's called the Anbar province, and that's about 100 miles from the Syrian border. Okay, so that gives you an idea about the location, and of course, that raises the question, you heard Bill and Byron talking about this, about whether the U.S. will launch airstrikes in Syria. So far, the U.S. has carried out more than 140 airstrikes in Iraq since early August, including those at the Haditha Dam. And we're getting reports that 5 ISIS Humvees with anti-aircraft artillery were destroyed, an ISIS checkpoint, and a military command center as well, Martha.
All right, John, thank you very much.
On the map, too, we can show you a little bit what John was talking about here. Baghdad, the capital city down here. 2 main rivers that go back through time, the Tigris to the east and the Euphrates to the west, and 2 major dams in Iraq to be focused on. Okay, the Mosul Dam is what we talked about 2 weeks ago. This is really where the first airstrikes were carried out on behalf of intelligence on the ground of Kurdish fighters there, and the airstrikes on behalf of the U.S. were able to knock the ISIS terrorists away from that dam. Very important, protects that water line, the infrastructure for Iraq. Now the focus over the past 48 hours has been the Haditha Dam here. This is substantial, 120 miles northwest of Baghdad. It's 5 miles wide. And U.S. officials will tell you that that is critical infrastructure. If it falls into militant hands, the damage could be significant. It controls all this water down through the Euphrates, just like the Mosul Dam did similar for the Tigris, eventually leading down through Tikrit and into Baghdad. 2 critical points, too, as we move through this conversation over the next week. Really, next couple of weeks. You've got elections next week in Iraq, so we're waiting to see how they come out. But you look at the reaction out of that NATO summit on Friday afternoon, whether it's Denmark in the north or Saudi Arabia to the southeast, there seems to be a consensus here that's growing that all these countries have to pitch in some manner to go ahead and assist in rooting out ISIS.
It seems fairly clear to many players around the world, so we'll see what our action is here.